Welcome back to the Wizards of Amazon podcast, your weekly blueprint for explosive success. I'm Carlos Alvarez, full-time successful Amazon seller and organizer of the largest Amazon seller meetup group in the world. Let's do this. Welcome to the Wizards of Amazon podcast, where we cover all things private label. My name is Carlos Alvarez, and I will be your host for the show. On today's episode, we have Liran Hirschkorn to join us. Liran, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. This is your first time on.
Yes.
Hopefully everybody listening to this has heard you on a podcast or seen you speak at an event. You've presented twice to my Amazon seller meetup group. For anybody who has not met Liran, Liran's a veteran Amazon seller, community leader, host of the e-commerce mindset podcast, CEO of Incrementum Digital. In addition, he's a very active and involved father and husband. I know this through social media, so it must be true. That last part actually is the part that I admire the most about Liran, even though he's adept at all these other things. I mentioned the last two parts because as a whole, to me, this meets the very definition of an extraordinary, busy schedule or life, however you want to word it. So when I saw a recent post of Liran's touching on goal setting and how he approaches this powerful mix of priorities, I wanted to dive deeper into this and see what we could all learn about this, and armed with that, maybe make some pretty cool choices in our life. So let me ask you something to start this, Liran. You've heard the expression, don't mix business and personal. Do you think that's possible? Like, is business and personal two totally different things?
No, but first I want to say, I admire a lot of what you do. A lot of the things you said about me, as far as very involved in the Amazon space and business, and I admire about you doing a lot of content, a lot of free content, for the seller community. So I really I can appreciate that as somebody who also looks to kind of do something similar as far as all the meetups, all the content, all the stuff that you put out. As far as the not mixing business and pleasure, yeah, I kind of think it's nonsense, or business and personal, because none of us are in business just to be in business. We're in business because we have certain personal goals, that are tied, right? You may have a personal goal of serving X amount of people through something, and you're doing that through the business, which is the vehicle to get there. You may have a goal of retiring when you're 40. You may have a goal of sending your kids to college and them never having to worry about how they're going to fund that, right? And I think your business is the vehicle that you use to fuel and fund the things that you want to give to others in your life, and the things you want for yourself in your life. And so I think your personal goals should be a lot tied into your business goals. I'll lead into one thing that you said that I've also worked on. You said something about being an involved parent, and it's something I've tried to work on myself. In 2019, I was on the road traveling, going to events, over 100 days a year. Definitely missing out on certain moments. 2020 definitely changed that in a lot of ways. But it's also, sometimes it's these small messages that you get from somebody else that really shift the way you think about something. So in the beginning of 2020, I took a course by Jesse Itzler called Build Your Life Resume. And a lot of what he talks about is that your resume shouldn't just be what you've accomplished sort of in business. You should have a life resume. And he talks about all these concepts there. And the way he breaks things down in his concepts is so easy to understand and to comprehend, and to take small tidbits and then implement in your life. So one of the things he says in sort of this training of Build Your Life Resume is never say no to a baseball catch. Okay. So it's like, I don't care what's going on. I don't care how busy I am. One of my priorities is that when I have, when one of my kids comes to me and says, hey, Dad, can we have a baseball catch? I never say no. And this is something I kind of took from that as far as like the parenting side, right? Like last night, it's 8:00 at night. I'm working. And my daughter says, hey, will you play Minecraft with me? Right. And that thing of like, never say no to a baseball catch enters my mind. I can easily say like, hey, I'm busy, I'm working, let's play on the weekend, or, let's do something else. But I'll say, hey, you know what, let's take 15 minutes and play. And I make that part of my priority, because I took this concept of never say no to a baseball game and said, okay, I'm going to incorporate this in my life. So when my daughter grows up someday, she feels like she got the time, that, she wanted from her parents, and probably for a lot of us, things that our parents didn't do for us, when we were kids.
And when that happens, and I hope I'm not getting too personal here with this, but like, because my son's come in and asked something similar, not Minecraft yet. And he's about to turn 3, but how do you deal with, or get this anxiety that you're falling behind, or I'm not going to get to this, or like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah. It's the exact thought I had yesterday, right? Like, I had to answer a client, but like, at the end of the day, the client, whatever, can wait. I can get back to it after. Like, when I look at, like, ultimately, like, what's really important, it's like this moment and this principle that I've like incorporated into my life is more important than this client that needs to be answered, or this email that needs to be answered, or this thing that needs to be done. And I can get back to that. And I'm not going to say at that point when I'm working and busy, like, okay, let's take 3 hours, but I'll say, okay, Emily, let's take 15 minutes, before you go to bed, and play. And at least I've kind of kept to that, to that principle. And like, I know looking back, like, that's just going to be a lot. One day I look back and it's going to be a lot more meaningful and important to me that I said yes and went with this concept of never say no to a baseball catch. More so than, how much money I made, or, and the other concept that I heard also is like, the number one gift you can give your kids is your time, right? It's not how much presents you buy them, or how much money you leave them, or, anything else really. It's like the greatest gift. And I think we live in a world where we're all super distracted all the time. And so it's being conscious of that. Like, okay, if I'm going to play a game with her, if I'm going to do something with her, maybe I'm going to put my phone aside for that 20 minutes, because the greatest gift you can give your kids is your time, and not anything else. And so I've had to learn it also myself, because, like I said, 2019, I was traveling over 100 days a year. I didn't, dedicate as much time as I would have liked to. But then I think you hear these concepts and you learn from somebody else, or you listen to something like this and you say, okay, I like that concept, I'm going to incorporate. And next time your kid comes and asks you something, you're going to have that little voice in your head that says, never say no to a baseball catch. And you might make a different decision, based on that.
I have a feeling that's going to be ringing in my ears. So I'm going to feel like too guilty and be like, oh my God, I just did something horrible. But like everybody, 2020, you were, home, like everyone in the world. So that was a huge shock between 2019, 100 days out of the year traveling, and 2020. Let's say June 2021, everyone's vaccinated, COVID is killed, like everything's great. What changes do you see yourself making? Like, do you go back on 100? Do you go to 180? What?
No, I realized, number one, that I've been extremely, extremely productive, being home, and the world has shifted in the sense that there's a lot more podcasts and Zoom calls. And, I think there will be also a lot of pent up demand for people to travel and get together face to face. I don't think you can, ever replace the contact, the trust, the relationships you can build on a face to face level. But I'm also, I'm also not looking to travel as much as I did before. I will probably be more selective, and realize also that, when you travel, even when you're traveling to that conference or business, you lose, the day you travel, you lose the day you come back, you're sort of recovering, sometimes from it. And I think I've been a lot more productive in my business in the last year, partly because I just sitting here at home in my office and working. And there's a lot to say to that. And like, maybe part of the over traveling and saying yes to too many things is like the fear of missing out, the fear of losing out, the, your business is not going to, my agency business is not going to grow, or I'm not going to learn something, or I'm going to miss out. Maybe saying no more is something, that's a personal struggle challenge of mine. Learning how to say no, again, for things like speaking or events or things like that, right? Like, what do I say yes to, what I say no to? So I think I would probably be more selective in what I kind of choose to travel for.
Oh, that's awesome. I was going to say, not just traveling. I'm glad you were not too selective and you said yes to come on the podcast and you've presented to my group and stuff like that. Since you mentioned conferences, the C word now, the good C word that's coming. And before we get into the post, that's really what I want to tear apart in this episode is in a good way. If you could only pick 3 conferences, what would they be? Like, assuming all the conferences continue, you're obviously going to go to more to 3, but what would your top 3 conferences be?
I think the Prosper Show has always been a good one in terms of the quality of the person in the room. As far as from a networking perspective, I think it attracts, higher quality sellers. I like SellerCon. I've gone to the last several years. Again, big conference. I think it attracts a very wide range of sellers, from people that are very new, just starting on Amazon, to again, really, really experienced sellers. There have been some really cool speakers there too, like Sarah Blakely and some other speakers. Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, right? Like some speakers you might not hear elsewhere or at different events. So it's one I've always enjoyed. I would add that I enjoyed when Ryan Moran was doing his capitalism conference. That was another conference that I really liked, that I went to for a couple of years, that I'd love to see him bring back. So those 3 were always good. And then as far as like not in conferences, some of my best sort of experiences have been going to like high level masterminds that are small. In 2016, one of the best events I ever went to was a mastermind done by Jason Fladlin from Rapid Crush, who did a 35 person mastermind event with Ben Cummings. And that was really good. Again, it was a $10,000 event. So it attracted just like a very high level type of seller. And it was really the networking relationships I made in that room that I still have today. So, to me, the best part of all these events are, last time I went to Prosper, I don't think I went into one session, because I was just sitting in that main huge room with the round tables, just talking to people. But I think that's, the best part.
I agree 100%. Like, say the last 3-4 conferences I've been to, I'm in the hallways. I've not been to Prosper yet. I'll definitely be going to the next one, but I really get a lot more from the hallways. It's not that there's nothing to be gained from the thing. It's just like, okay, sponsored products. I get it.
Right.
Like, and you're appealing to a large audience. I get it. I know it's important, but like, I could do more out here with the vendors. I could do more with the people that are attending.
100%.
Totally. Yeah. So let's get to this post that really, I see myself adopting this moving forward. So the first thing I guess it's 6 lines. I'm not going to make you read them. I'd like to just read them through one time so everybody gets it. And then afterwards, I want to know, did you create this? Did you find it somewhere? Was it one of these conferences you went to? Do you remember? But it's, what do I want to become? And 2021 is what we're talking about here. So, but this could apply anywhere. Who do I want to become in 2021? What would I have to do to become that? What is my number one personal goal in 2021? What is my number one relationship goal in 21? What is my number one health goal? And what is my number one wealth goal in 2021? So where did you get that from, first of all?
Yeah. Good question. I think I know where I got it from. And a lot of times the mindset sort of content, what I share, what I speak about, I heard from, somebody else much wiser and smarter, than me. And I like to try to, 1, incorporate it in my life if I can. And 2, I like to share it with other people, because I think I know if chances are if something inspired me, then if I share it, it probably will inspire others. I think this was actually Damon John. I think maybe if I share this sort of early January, I heard a talk that he did. I've been spending some of my time on Clubhouse while working or going to sleep or whatever, kind of like listening on my phone. And I think he had a goal. He had a session on setting goals for the new year. I think the idea, and I've also heard, I follow another guy named Charlie Harari. He's got a daily show called Daily Boost. He's a Jewish, Orthodox, Jewish religious guy, but his show really has nothing to do with religion. He gives kind of like a daily 20-minute talk. You can find it on his Instagram or even go live on Zoom, and it's super inspirational. And he talks a lot about this concept of be, do, have, right? Like most people want to have something and they start off with the have, right? Like I want to have this amazing house. I want to have this amazing business. I want to have a 7-figure business, an 8-figure business. I want to have this car or this stuff, whatever it is, or this health, this 6-pack, whatever, right? Most people want to start with have. And he really talks about flipping it around, right? Like ultimately, have is the last part of the process. First, it's asking yourself, who do I want to be? I want to be somebody that's successful. What do successful people do, right? So be, do, have, right? Flipping it to who do I want to be? I want to be somebody that's successful. What do successful people do? They have consistent habits. They schedule things in their calendar. Certain habits, and then as a result, what do those people have is sort of the third part. And I think also learning from people like Tony Robbins, a lot of times the greatest power doesn't come from sort of like just coming up with an answer. It comes up with the questions that you ask yourself. And so starting off with this question of who do I want to become in 2021 is really like this aspirational question of what am I not being today? And what do I need to be in 2021? For me, I think the answer mostly is in all these areas around health and relationships and wealth is mostly around consistency. Because like most other humans, or people, we get into a habit. We might start going to the gym, or we might read every day, and then we fall out of it, right? And so I think the biggest challenge and what I try to focus on is being consistent, because I think it's really that consistency of, if you work out once, it won't do anything. But if you work out for 30 days in a row, it'll probably be a major thing, right? So I think for me, the answer to like sort of who do I want to become in 2021 in a lot of these areas is being consistent in all these areas, whatever that means to you as far as like what you're trying to achieve. I read a book this year by the original founder of Netflix. I think it's called the book is called
The Death of Blockbuster.
Yeah, it's in the book. That will never work, right? And it's everybody who's sort of initially told him like your idea will never work. But one of the things he writes in this book is one of the things he's most proud of is that throughout building Netflix, he kept a good relationship with his family and his wife, and didn't get divorced along the way, didn't lose his kids along the way, and he put certain principles into place. Like every Tuesday at 5:00. He would leave work at that point. He would have a date night with his wife. And that was like a hard rule. People knew you just don't bother him after 5:00. Doesn't matter what the company emergency is. Doesn't matter. He had like hard and fast rules. And I think if you start to incorporate some boundaries and some rules into your life, it becomes easier to try to do this stuff, which is almost counterintuitive, because in the sense that like for a lot of people, freedom, and for me, I think I used to have this sort of mindset too, that freedom meant I could, and maybe part of the reason why I traveled over 100 days a year is freedom for me was like, hey, I do whatever I want when I want. Like I want to go travel to a conference. Like I don't really ask anyone. I don't ask my family maybe, right? Like I just go, I don't consider anything else. Like I have a business, I have freedom. I do whatever I want when I want. But actually freedom is like a certain level of discipline, right? Is freedom because if you do whatever you want when you want, then you're going to eat cake at every meal. You're not going to live that long, right? How much freedom are you going to have, in 5 years from the result of those actions? Whereas if you keep more disciplined in 5 years, you'll have a lot more freedom because you're going to be still in shape to be able to play with your kids or, enjoy the business that you've built or whatever it is. So I think for me, that was like a change in a shift in mindset, some of which came from going to Date with Destiny in December of 2019.
Date with Destiny is on my list of things to go to.
It's incredibly life-changing event. I was afraid to attend that for 10 years because knowing that, this is scary. There's a scary part of going because, you might need to change and there might be things that are wrong with you. And it's intense.
Let me do this little side note right here with Tony Robbins. And I had not been to a full blown Tony Robbins event. And there was something like 2 years back in South Florida. And it was like Tony Robbins, it was Gary Vee. And it was like very micro. It was like 15, 20, I forget the name of it. Yeah. One day event. And Tony Robbins came out and then I saw the immediate, it was like, oh, this is the cult I saw about. Like it got live. And he immediately said like, I need to somehow compact this. It was like this ungodly amount of hours into this 30-minute, hour-long session. He starts coming out with sticks and like hitting them together. And he was a presence. I was like, in person, this guy's not going to be this to me. And then he told everybody to start jumping. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I always refuse. Like when everyone's jumping, I stand there and look at everybody like, you idiots. Right. And then I'm like, why do this? Like, let me just jump. Like what could possibly go wrong if I jump? And it was powerful, man. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this Date with Destiny. And I'm just going to, why not just follow for an entire, conference? Why not just be the follower here? And I'm excited to see how that goes. But how long have you been following that? I didn't catch when you discovered it.
I would say that it's definitely a concept that I sort of picked up in 2020. But I would also say that really I got into personal development. My first Tony Robbins event was in 2008. I went to UPW, but I didn't sign up for Date with Destiny because I was scared. It's a lot more intense. My first Tony Robbins event was then, and I really got into personal development in like 2008 when I got into network marketing. In fact, my direct upline was the guy, you may know the name Jim Quick, who wrote the book Limitless, who's now blown up since then. But I worked very closely with him as a mentor during that time. He used to do these 3-way calls with me when I had somebody interested in the network marketing opportunity. I learned a tremendous amount. And I really understood like network marketing I'd probably never do again in my life. But I think it's one of the greatest vehicles for personal development because the only difference between you and somebody else successful in the company is you. Everybody else has the same products, same opportunity, and someone is out there being super successful, bringing in a lot of people, selling a lot of product, and you're not. You got to just look in the mirror. And so it really, that time really started me down this path of personal development, of realizing that, of listening to, Jim Rohn CDs at the time, right? Like, and Jim Rohn would say, work harder on yourself than you do on your job, right? Like that you really need to invest in yourself. And that's really, so I would say I've been down this path of personal development for, 12, 13 years. But, sometimes in and out more into it than not, just based on falling off the wagon, right? Just probably, as sometimes we tend to be, but I would say in the last year, definitely since attending Date with Destiny and UPW, kind of getting re-energized. And one of the things that have helped me is following certain mentors that I get inspiration, because I think it's against our human nature to have the right mindset. Our natural survival instincts just want us to be comfortable, and being uncomfortable is not a natural human thing that we want. Like if it's between staying in bed or getting out of bed, our natural human survival is to be comfortable and warm and safe. And so I think plugging into some kind of, so I follow Jesse Itzler, I follow this guy, Charlie Harari. Like I try to plug in on a regular basis, not necessarily every day, but on a regular basis to something inspirational that will get me energized, because I do think that if we're not continuously plugged into something like that, then we'll fall off the wagon, because it's against our nature to, it's against our nature to be uncomfortable and to come out of our comfort zone. Jim Quick talks a lot about the butterfly, and saying that, it's when we kind of break through our shell, right? It's when the when the butterfly breaks through the cocoon, right, that it really becomes this like butterfly and grows and expands. But you have to become uncomfortable and kind of break through. And that's, again, I'm certainly not perfect, but I try to stay plugged into mindset type of content because it's helpful for me to stay plugged in.
Yeah, I want to get into those questions again. Before I do, though, what you said about getting uncomfortable is really hard. There was I wouldn't know if you'd call this person a philosopher or what, but there's Abraham Tversky. I hope I'm saying this right. Tversky. He has this he's brilliant, but he talks about a lobster and how a lobster, gets uncomfortably large inside of its shell. And that degree of uncomfort forces it to go down, shuck its shell, if that's the right word, to grow a new one and be vulnerable during that time. But it's absent that, you don't grow. Like you can't grow. So there's a lot more to it. He says it a ton better, but that's what it made me think of. And whenever I feel uncomfortable, I always think of that. And it's this like long bearded, like cool dude that says this in the video. But yeah,
I know the video you're talking about, and I would equate that to failure, right? Like if you haven't gone through failure, then you haven't sort of gotten a chance to get rid of that shell and learn from it, and grow. And the only way you kind of get there is by trying and being uncomfortable and growing. And when you overcome failure and you move forward, it gives you a certain muscle, right? Like, and it's the same thing, right? Talking about being uncomfortable and growth. Like when people are building muscle, they're actually, I think, something happens where the muscles rupture, right? And like they cause them to rebuild and to grow. And it's exact same thing. You're putting stress on the only way to grow your muscles is by putting stress and weight against them, right? So if you think about that in your life, it's kind of the same. The only way to grow is by putting certain stressors and pressures on you. I know, bringing this back to sort of e-commerce, I know these guys that were selling on Amazon. They had an amazing business, 8 figures plus, and then they got suspended from Amazon, and it really hurt their business. And they said at that point, they decided like we're relying too much on Amazon. And today, they're back on Amazon, but as a result, today they have $100 million business selling into retail, because it was that pressure of getting suspended on Amazon that forced them, that at the time probably seemed like it was the worst possible thing that could happen to you. It forced them to say, hey, our business is not really secure. We need to get into retail. Now they have a massive retail business. And Steve Jobs says you can only connect the dots looking backwards. That, the things that happened to you at the time that sometimes seem like the worst thing, sometimes in hindsight are the best things. And to me, mindset is about having a different perspective on the things that are happening to you, and realizing that you don't know it today, but again, this worst thing that's looking really, really bad may end up being the greatest catalyst for future growth.
Powerful stuff, man. You're like a wealth of info for like those, like, oh, I'm dealing with this. Well, so-and-so said, and then you apply it. That's awesome. And I guess that's from attending a lot of conferences or reading or both.
Yeah. It's from listening to podcasts and watching YouTube and listening on Clubhouse and, trying to getting that inspiration, because I do think it's super helpful. I had a moment in 2020 where I had to buy out a partner, and it was stressful. And I was dealing with a lot of anxiety. And then I had this little voice in my head from Tony Robbins that says, like, this too shall pass, right? And like, when you think about that, this too shall pass, it just gives you a different perspective. You're like, you know what? It's going to end up being fine. I'm not going to die as a result. I'm not going to be out in the street as a result. I'm not going to like just go, like having some of that, sort of perspective on the way you think inside your head that comes from other places, I think has been super helpful for me in terms of my outlook. And I do think this mindset, the reason why I like to talk about it is I think it's the foundation of all success that you can have in in any area of life is this foundational mindset.
Well said, man. The post. Let me get back to this post. I have a really big question. So when I first did this, I'm going to admit I'm guilty here. I wrote it out, and every single thing I wrote out had to do with some sort of betterment or advancement in my different businesses, like my professional businesses. And I noticed that I didn't mention anything about my personal, except for the one that specifically says personal. And then I realized the majority of these had nothing to do. Like I just defaulted to like, these are my business goals and not personal. So when you do this, or when you approach this even in a different way, do you have two separate sets for like business and personal? And how do they, how do they interact?
Yeah. I mean, I think you want to have, different goals for business and personal, and probably for you, Carlos, if I had to dissect and try to give a psychological analysis, you're so good in business that, and you're already doing well, and you're already so good in it, you're a lot more comfortable going to advancing those goals there. And like you said, being a parent and relationship and the stuff that you probably could be better at, you shy away from because it's more uncomfortable, right? And probably why you're more comfortable setting
you're hired
aggressive goals, right? And so, I think you want to, list out every single one, like your number one relationship goal, your number one health goal can't have anything to do really with your business, although your business can help fuel some of that stuff, right? Like you can hire a personal trainer if you're doing well in business. But if you're, if you're not making any money, it's not something that's attainable. So I think doing well in business can make it easier for you to reach, to reach some of your goals. But I think you really want to separate out each one, and write some things down that should be goals for you around your relationship. It's maybe it's, going to bed at the same time as your spouse, or taking time once a week to do something together. Or one of the things I've incorporated in the last year is a 24-hour once a week digital detox. So on the weekend, I take a 24-hour period, and nobody in my house is on any device for that 24-hour period of time, which is kind of crazy. But also now I really look forward to that time, because there can be no emergency in business that I'll even know about during that time. And it's like super peaceful. And I get to spend time with my daughter without my phone and my wife. And it's probably my wife tells me it's the only time during the week that she has my full 100% attention, which shows you, right? Like probably you and I struggle with the same stuff. Our phone is like a pacifier, like you just need it there. It's complete distraction. And it's probably true. Like it's the only time during the week that somebody has my full 100% attention, because my phone isn't there, which is sad. It's a sad state in itself. But I think you need to go through each one of these and say, what I want to become in this area of my life, what I want to become in terms of my health in 2021. And sticking that up somewhere where you could see it throughout the year, and you'll fall off. And I think it's okay. I think it's really powerful just to do the exercise. Just writing it down does wire something in your brain to move you closer, to take actions that are closer to that goal.
So my next question actually has to do with that. It has to do with dealing with, some of those failures and setbacks. But I wanted to mention something that you just said. I just recently had lunch with Abe Chomail. I think I'm saying his name right.
Yep.
Met him on Clubhouse, and we kind of got connected on Clubhouse. He was down in South Florida. We had some great sushi, great conversation. And what you described sounded very much, and this is how the conversation sort of came up. So it sounded like the Sabbath, if I'm saying that right. I was like, oh, that's okay. That's what it is. Okay. Yeah. And we're talking about it. I'm like, I would have to approach this 1 hour at a time, like 1 hour and 2 hours digital detoxing, but it must be a massive, re-energizing that next day.
Definitely. So I'll tell you how it started. So I grew up, my parents have kept the Sabbath. I grew up in a house where, starting Friday night to Saturday night, you didn't use any electricity. It's a lot of family times. You went to temple, prayer, things like that. You eat a big meal Friday night. You eat another big meal Saturday afternoon. It's really nice in a lot of ways. But as a teenager, I sort of decided, like, I rebelled all against it, right? As teenagers tend to rebel, and I stopped kind of keeping it. And then I had a good friend of mine who's down in Florida too, Taz Zashan, you probably know. Taz, really into mindset, super inspiring. If you want to follow somebody that's consistent and is consistently journaling and working out, and like somebody I admire from that standpoint, he sent me this video on this guy Andrew Kirby that has this whole set of videos on YouTube on the dopamine detox. And he's like, hey, I'm doing this. You want to do it with me? And so I said, okay, let's do it. And so for a 24-hour period, it was like Saturday to Sunday, I put away my phone, and it was super, super difficult. And so after that, I said to my wife, hey, why don't we try doing this Sabbath thing? She was into it. And so we really started from Friday night to Saturday night. I would say less from a religious standpoint, more from all the benefits that it has around spending family time and, my phone. And again, I think for me, like, it's a lot easier to be disciplined when you have a hard and fast rule. My phone is in my office during this time. It's not anywhere near me, as opposed to saying, like, hey, today I'm going to try to be off social media and my phone's with me. I feel like it's just a lot more challenging and a lot more difficult. So, I would challenge anybody here to just try this for a period of 24 hours on the weekend, like Saturday or Sunday. And, I get a lot more things. Like, I try to read during the week, but I would say, like, most of what my reading now comes during this time on the weekend, during this 24-hour period where I can read, 100 pages of a book, or, Friday night and Saturday. And like, I finished a book in January, and it was just reading every weekend, just reading because I've been too busy during the week to really spend time reading. So it's been good from a lot of standpoints. And I think just taking time to think is also really, really important if you're in business, to really just kind of take a step back and just think, like, where do I want to go? What I want my, and it is a time where I come up with a lot of ideas of things that I want to implement in my business, because I'm taking a step out of the business and I'm just thinking about the business. So there's a lot of benefits in doing this. For me, making it a rule has been easier to accomplish than if I just said, let me try this detox off social media, because it's super hard.
That just induced a ton of anxiety. I don't know what chemical that is in me, but I was clutching my phone as you were telling me this. I love challenges. I may look at me. I'm not making it a rule. I may attempt that. Yeah. Right.
Yes.
I want to be respectful of your time, but there's two more things I want to touch on. And that is, one, like, what advice would you give somebody that has never been a goal setter on how best to approach setting goals? And then what you touched on a second ago, which was dealing with, what would the typical one be? I want to lose weight this year. You said it January 1st, and then you've already had a major setback by the end of the week, or an Amazon or e-commerce setback. Like, how do you deal with setbacks?
Yeah. Some things that, number one, everybody deals with setbacks. I think it's totally normal. I think you kind of want to be, in some ways, I made this post yesterday on my Facebook wall, and like, it was 6 rules for success. And rule number 1 was forgive yourself, right? Like, forget about the past. Like, just think about today and where you want to get to, and setbacks are part of the growth process. For me, something that's helpful is journaling, because it holds me accountable in some sense to, like, okay, it's been 6 days and you haven't exercised, like, why? And like, it's like, and which, again, I'm not even being into all this, right? Like, I'm not perfect. And happens. But journaling will kind of get me to think about, what are my goals? I think if you're not a goal setter, think about it like this. You're getting in a car and you want to go from New York to California, and you don't have a GPS. You're just driving, and you could be driving around in circles, but you're not getting any closer to your destination. And goal setting is the GPS map to at least point you in the right direction of where you want to get to. And do they say, if you don't have a plan, somebody else has a plan for you? And so you're just following somebody else's plan, but it's not your plan. You do have goals, except they're probably not the goals that you want. Your goals are to have random results. If you're not setting, sort of like intentional goals. So by writing things down, you even just taking the step of writing things down, putting it in a drawer, and don't look at it in a year. I think you'll be surprised at the things you do accomplish just because you took the steps to write it down. Because again, you're taking something mental, you're putting it out in the physical sort of realm by putting it down on paper, and that whatever that action of writing it down wires your brain to put you closer in terms of taking some of those steps. It's not magic. You could think about things like the law of attraction. It's also not magic, but when you think about the things that you want, when you write down the things that you want, you're wiring your brain to take actions that get you closer to the things that you want. And so you are driving around without a GPS if you haven't set those goals. So if you get in the car and are used to putting in GPS, then you don't have one for your life. You want to think about why. And I wouldn't be at all concerned about if you don't meet those goals. I think that's a lot of the reason why we don't write things down or we don't set goals, because we're afraid, just like you just said, I may try this. The reason why you didn't say I will try this is because you're not fully committed necessarily to trying it yet, which is fine, right? But if you write it down, you probably get closer to actually trying it. And I think we're so afraid of failure that as a result, we don't end up writing our goals, and we're doing ourselves a disservice. So I would encourage you to do that and follow some people that you connect to that can inspire you to. There's so many, I feel like we're like living in a super privileged age where you can follow people like a Jesse Itzler or even a Taz Ashan or, people that you can follow and be like, they inspire you to be better, and I think that's the power and the benefit of social media. There's a lot of people talk about the downsides of social media, but the fact that you can listen to a podcast like this is, super powerful.
Absolutely. And Taz Hassan, our mutual friend, not only do you just following him, you will be motivated. It's impossible not to, on a food level, a spiritual level, just everything. You'll also, the side benefit is constantly get to see some amazing sports cars.
Yes. Yeah. And, you can say, you can look at that too and say, like, Taz made his passion for sports cars also into a business. If you follow him, you'll see that he buys cars and he rents them out, and makes money off it and finances his passion. Like, he's consistently journaling on Sundays. He's setting out his tone for the week. Like, when I see his Instagram of him working out, I might wake up on a Saturday at 10 a.m. and I already see that at 5 o'clock on a Saturday he's at the gym. I question my own personal motivation, right? And like, I say like, hey, I need to step up my game. So I think my first step would be to find who you can connect with and follow, and realize that it is kind of against our human nature. And the reason why maybe you haven't done all the things you want to do is because our human nature is to be comfortable and recognize that, and then learn that you need to fight against it. You need to do the things you don't want to do and do them anyway. And kind of like the book, Mel Robbins' book, The 5-Second Rule, she talks about parenting yourself in a sense, right? Like as a kid, your parents won't allow you to eat 5 ice creams in a row, or, but as an adult, you could do that and nobody's telling you not to. And in a certain sense, you need to kind of parent yourself and look at yourself from that perspective sometimes and do the things you don't want to do and do them anyway.
Awesome. Liran, I want to be respectful of your time. We covered a lot. I actually, you've been on my list from the beginning. I think at the time, at the time that I started this podcast, you were co-hosting a different podcast with Andy at the time. And yes. I'm like, man, I'm going to get my podcast to a point that they'll want to be on my show. And so you exceeded all expectations. I'm actually extremely happy that we didn't really touch on a lot of Amazon, but we touched on things that I feel will help you succeed even more on Amazon, really.
Totally.
But you are a wealth of information when it comes to Amazon. So before we completely wrap this up, can you give some good ways for people to reach out to you, whether it's Amazon PPC, e-commerce, mindset, your podcast, your agency, everything?
Yeah, great. Thank you. So my agency is called Incrementum Digital. So incrementumdigital.com is the website. I also do have a podcast called E-commerce Mindset. The name was intentional because I do like to, I talk a lot about Amazon and marketing, but I do like to incorporate, a certain level of mindset sometimes into it. And I have a Facebook group also with the same name, E-commerce Mindset. And I just post a lot on my own personal Facebook wall. So you can follow that. You can send me a DM if you only if you love this podcast episode. Send me a DM. But no, if you have questions in general, feel free to reach out to me.
I love it. And before you escape from this and we get on with our days, something I ask everyone that's on the show, and that is, what is your favorite book and why?
Okay, so this will be a little bit of a longer answer. One of the things I took on in 2020 in terms of studying, you'll be a little bit surprised, but it's called Kabbalah. Okay, Kabbalah is Jewish mysticism. Okay, really also not really related to religion. Madonna was famous for going to the LA Kabbalah Center. A lot of celebrities, and it's got a lot of great concepts in it. Again, it's very it's almost, you could almost think that Tony Robbins like studied Kabbalah and then taught a lot of the concepts through his personal development. They're very, very similar. But I read this book. There's this book called The Power of Kabbalah, and it's really good. It's like 13 kind of principles for living. Again, I don't think it has anything to do with religion. In fact, one of the interesting things that I took this course. The course was essentially free, pay what you want type course, like donation. The course was taught by David Guillaume, who some of you may know from the Amazon community, who he's also happens to be the co-founder of Mary Ruth Organics, which is like an 8-figure Amazon business. So super successful. He not only studies it, but spends a lot of his time teaching it. And so that book is a good sort of entryway into learning some of the concepts, and very much a lot of the principles we spoke about here. I think you'll also be able to read about in this book. So probably a book a lot of people listening to this have never read or looked at before. But I think one that, if you're into mindset, you'll enjoy reading.
I love it. I definitely have not read it. Was this something I can grab from Amazon, or was it like from a specific site?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. It's called The Power of Kabbalah. And it's a great read. You can read it over a couple of days. And it just has a lot of good concepts for, how to live your life, like gratitude, and, just, again, a lot of concepts you may have heard before, but, it's one of those books that I'll go back to and like open up, and reread, because it has good concepts in it.
I love it. I'm going to be ordering it after this. Liran, this was one of my longest episodes, but it was packed, exceeded all expectations, man. I love it. Keep crushing it. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Liked what you heard and want to stay connected? Join our Facebook group or find me anywhere on social media at Wizards of Amazon, or text the word Amazon to 69922.